They came up with their own remedies to survive. This is a great escape for us, so why not create this for someone else, where then the customer tends to get a bit more picky on what to expect. But they still have the signs up just to show a bit of history. So Sri Lanka has always predominantly been a very unique destination. They've attracted varying guests. We had our standardized sort of guest that used to come to the destination just for the beach, the white sandy beaches and the tranquil sort of experience they get. And it was just a destination where people used to come for, let's say, 1 or 2 weeks and then fly straight out. It has changed over the years and last decades, especially post the civil war in Sri Lanka, where we see a mix of guests, more travelers, more experiential travelers, and more luxury travelers, because Sri Lanka used to not be positioned as a luxury destination. I think given the capacity that Asia now has to offer in terms of luxury and wellness tourism, Sri Lanka and certain parts of it has well positioned itself. Also touching on the cultural heritage, the architecture, the history, there is quite a vast, luxurious plethora of offerings for the customer, especially if you take the influence from various, from the colonization to the Indians in the north of the country, to the east, and then the south, which is a mix of, let's say, Dutch, Portuguese, and the British influence. It has influenced the heritage, the history, the culture, the architecture. So this is something that the global tourists see as something very interesting to explore, and it's more of an adventure. And from the locals' point of view, obviously, this is something we see on a daily basis. So we always say what we see on a daily basis might not be as valuable to us, but it could be, and it is quite valuable to most people, especially traveling from Europe and newer countries who want to explore, and especially explore their history and maybe some of their influence in the Asian countries from the past. So actually we built the Serendipity Collection right after the global pandemic, and we saw a gap where most of the travelers were stuck in their homes. They probably made their homes more of a getaway from whatever they were trying to avoid globally, from viruses or illnesses and so on, and they were focused more on wellness. Most of them also looked at wellness from a point where they came up with their own remedies to survive. So when travel started or restarted again with a lot of restrictions, we saw people did not want to spend time in a room next to another room in a larger hotel. So it was more creating destinations with vaster spaces, more open spaces, spaces and destinations that were not explored before. For example, this started when I was with my business partner at his villa in the south. And we used to actually just travel to his villa, which is on an 8-acre land, and it's overlooking the entire Aligama Bay. It's designed by a Japanese architect, international architect called Shigeru Ban, who's quite famous. And the spaces are open, the air moves, flows, the lighting, everything is quite magnificent. So we thought, okay, this is a great escape for us. So why not create this for someone else, where they could come and explore and enjoy this sort of tranquility and paradise. So which is why we came up with the name Serendipity as well. It's in our words, in how we saw the word serendipity, it's something which was unexplored and something unseen by others. So these holiday homes of some people who they visited not regularly but on and off were also escapes that we wanted others to explore from the eyes of the owners and the architects who built it for them. And the gap in the market basically was that when we saw travel in Sri Lanka, especially like I mentioned before, was predominantly into larger hotels, and they were larger group travel, not really individuals booking for either. Now you see quite common to see like groups of girls traveling or females traveling together. You see a single solo travelers. So this models kind of, when you travel in groups to larger hotels, that sort of died down globally to a larger extent, unless it's corporate travel or MICE travel and so on. But when you look at the individual traveler who wants to explore more of Sri Lanka, there was a huge gap. And either you have the really high end or you have the 3 4 star larger chain hotels. So we saw a gap in the market where they could still feel at home while they travel, which is why we started this. Okay, so guests can be quite demanding now, especially because there's a lot that Sri Lanka has to offer. So it's not like a destination like, let's say, for example, Spain or Portugal or Greece, where you can just go, you book a package for 7 to 14 days. You know exactly what to expect. You have your all inclusives and so on. Sri Lanka does have a few of those products, but when you have more products to offer, then the customer tends to get kind of a bit more picky on what to expect, because their minds are sort of programmed to expect, okay, we check in at this time, we check out at this time, this is the buffet that we expect, this is the sort of food that we are to expect, and these are the timings of the buffets and so on, right? Sri Lanka still has that, but now we have a lot of unique products as well, which I would categorize as boutique products, right? So there was a boutique hotel category which was created out of thin air, I think a couple of decades ago, which was not formalized with the Sri Lanka Tourist Board. However, now it's sort of categorized and falling into a certain segment. Still, there is a gap because that boutique segment, or even the segment I'm in, which is the luxury villa segment, and we are also getting into boutique hotels. It's sort of a area which was not predominantly promoted by Sri Lanka tourism, but the individuals themselves started promoting them from these larger sort of boutique chains as well. So now there's a bit more demand in that area. And I also see, like I said earlier, that if you sort of offer quite a lot to a customer, like if you have, for example, if I offer you 5 different options for a pair of shoes, that would be a tough decision. But if I give you 2 pairs and say pick one, it would be an easier decision. So this is the sort of thing that so every customer is sort of expecting when they come to a villa. And when they come to a villa, they're on their own time. When they come to a boutique hotel, yes, they're a mix of their own time and also a set time. And it becomes a bit, the practicality of handling these customers becomes a bit tough, for the simple reason that, let's say with a smaller operation, if there's a special requirement on food, right, it's hard to do the purchasing last minute and so on. So that's one perfect example, unless they book well in advance. But customers now, since they have the options, they like to be a bit more demanding. They also like to, which is fine, as long as it's within a certain practicality sort of guideline where we can also cater well to that demand. And I think the country also needs to improve in terms of its distribution networks, because there are still shortfalls in supplies, for example, right? Like, let's say someone wants a fresh fish in Norelia. It's very hard to get fresh fish in Norelia. You should get mostly fresh poultry. In the south, it's hard to get fresh poultry. It's easier to get fresh fish. And this is all due to distribution networks. And if you take low country vegetables, it's different to high country vegetables and so on. So when these distribution networks also improve a bit, the customer experience side and the demand side of the customers can be met to a great extent, like more successful countries who have now adapted to this in Southeast Asia, such as like Indonesia or Thailand, and also Vietnam now, which is a fast growing market. So the hardest is to create a feeling, and we create the experience thinking about the feeling in place. So as I mentioned earlier, it's to think about how we would want to feel when we travel as a customer, or me as an individual. That translates into the rest of the team as well. So whenever I talk to the team on curating these experiences at the villas, it's always, how would you like to be treated, or how would you like to feel when you stay at a property? Would you like to be overwhelmed at check-in? For example, you could be, if you talk about global wellness now, there is also mindfulness. So customer could be anxious. They could not, when they check in, they might not like to be overloaded with information. So we also take these things into consideration. When a customer wants to be a bit more flexible, maybe they came after a long flight, they are exhausted, they're checking in. And at check-in, we try not to do a formal check-in. We try to do a pre-check-in prior to their arrival, so that we have their passports and all their details in place, so that when they come, we just do a quick overview on the place and where they'll be sleeping, take their bags in while Our managers talk to them and they know exactly what to expect. But this information overload, in most sensory terms, has become a very sensitive part, which we are trying to now negate or minimize on check-in, so that they enjoy their holiday more. For them to keep in mind, okay, the kitchen is here, or the dining room is on this place, or the safe is located here, or these are the experiences that you can explore. It's so much of an information overload, especially if it's someone who is a first time visitor to Sri Lanka. And this sort of builds then a bit of trust from the start, where they're left alone. They're left alone to figure certain parts of their adventure out, which is what we like to do as well as travelers now. And once they come into that, the groove of getting accustomed to the local culture and the way Sri Lankans do things, for example, because it's very different to the way Europeans do things. So if you have a European customer or an Arab customer, right, they're very different in terms of culture and perspective. So when they come and they start staying in a new place, which is a new environment for them as well, we try not to overwhelm them with things. So this taking more interest in how the customer feels, especially from check-in and throughout their stay, is what we focus on the overall experience. Okay, so I would guess in terms of percentages, we plan quite a lot, but most of it is uncertain. I would say we plan 80% and expect 20% of a variable, but I guess it's a flip side of that. And that's why we need to be agile and sort of prepare for those kind of not issues, but challenges, especially with guests. Because like I mentioned earlier, you could have a guest that comes in after a long haul flight. We could set up like a barbecue dinner or something like that at a set time, but the guest could be like, okay, I just want to now relax and go to sleep a bit early. So or they might not want to climb Sigiriya, they might just want to take a drive around it. So these kind of things are unplanned for, and we need to be sort of prepared as well. This doesn't take a lot of planning, so it's like having a skeleton in place where you just fill in the rest after the guest arrives, which is more of like an sort of an a la carte menu where the guest picks from. This works much better and easier than pre-planning for a guest arrival. We do look at the details in terms of guest preferences, dietary requirements, likes and dislikes, sort of linen they'd like in their room, to if there are certain experiences they'd like to do during their stay. Do they like to be communicated more to or less? These sort of things for us are basic. The rest we try to gauge after the customer check-in. However, the rest is just a piggyback throughout their stay, where we sort of wing it, let's say. Personally, I think I'm biased towards this, because for the simple reason that surprisingly that not many people know that, but I was born in Noor Area, up in the hill country, brought up there for a decade, and then for a decade now it's been 3 decades or 4 decades since I lived there. Let's not talk about age, but I still frequent Noor Area quite often. I think there's a lot that people can do still as a destination in Noor Area, regardless of, and the hill country as a whole. Pico Trails have done it really well by setting up individual trails for different people to take treks on, exploring different sort of you get the highest elevation to even the Kandy elevations around Kandy, which are different sort of treks, different sort of flora and fauna, and you also get the other stuff that you can do other than just what locals experience. Like when you go to Noor Area, for example, it's crowded during April season. But then it's dead for the rest of the year. But Noor Area has one of the oldest golf clubs in the country, the St. Andrews Golf Club, which I also quite frequent. And Sri Lanka as a whole has, I think, 3 to 4 international golf courses, right? So if you take these areas which people are not focusing on, sports travel, golfing tourism. Now I know pickle and paddle is the new trend, but Sri Lanka has one of the oldest golf courses in the world, which is also the Colombo Golf Club. It's a royal golf club, and if I'm not wrong, I think it's the second or third oldest royal golf club in the world after St. Andrews Golf Club in Scotland and the Royal Golf Club, I think, in Chennai. I think then it's Colombo. I could be corrected if I'm wrong, but it's quite an old traditional club. So these sort of things in Sri Lanka, especially in the hill country, are unexplored. Right? People always talk about tea as the most common thing, common commodity which is exported from Sri Lanka, and which is a commonality to the hill country, and you have low country tea as well. However, coffee was the first plantation, and due to blight and so on, that was experienced at one point, and they completely destroyed all the coffee plantations, and they started growing tea. Now, coffee has started coming back into the picture because they've started harvesting coffee from different areas in the hill country, supporting a lot of local families and especially women who harvest them themselves and then bring them to a central point where they're processed. So this is enriching a lot of families in the hill country. So I hope and wish that at some point that Sri Lanka wouldn't just promote, a one-night stay in Nurelia or a one-night stay in Jaffna. That's another whole different topic. Or in the Northeast, there are loads of tourists who know. If you know, you head to the East Coast. But if you don't really go, because there is a bit of a lag in terms of promoting Sri Lankan individual areas of Sri Lanka as a destination. It's usually cultural tourism, but if you say cultural tourism, it's just a focus on Sigiriya, Dambulla, Anuradhapura, the traditional Kandy temple, and so on. But there is a lot more culture to experience. Like, if you take Norelia, you have the Hill Club. The Hill Club was a hunting club back in the day, right? It was a gentleman's only club. You still have to wear suit and tie to dine there. There is a separate entrance for women to enter the building, which is quite derogatory if you take the current context. But if you take a tourist who, someone from England who thinks that's only still prevalent from the days that England colonized India and so on, it's still in Sri Lanka. However, it's not practiced. Thank God it's not practiced, but they still have the signs up just to show a bit of history. Now, these are things which are not explored or shown to guests, and which have to be experienced a bit more, so that it's not just the good things. It's not just sitting on a beach and having a nice cocktail and enjoying that, but also experiencing what has happened and transitioned, where Sri Lanka has transitioned over the last few decades into where it is today. Okay, so to put things diplomatically, and to be diplomatic about this answer, there is the Asian traveler, like I said, has a lot of variety and a lot to choose from. So because when someone visits our countries, we tend to go all out most of the time. Even if it's a family setting at home, if someone comes over for dinner, we ask them, okay, would you like some cutlets and patties, and would you like some bites before your main meal? What kind of alcohol do you want? What kind of wines do you want to drink? And it's always going all out, above and beyond, right? So when we sort of travel as Sri Lankans or any Asian traveling to another country, they sort of expect the same, not just value for money, but a value proposition that's similar to what we are used to. And we sort of have it in the back of our mind as to, okay, if we do this in our country and our homes, why can't we get the same when we go there? Most travelers traveling out of Sri Lanka tend to feel that there's a shortfall because it's very regimented and very sort of restricted. It's not as hospitable. So the hospitality side of things in Asia to the Middle East to Europe to, let's say, the Americas are completely different, and it's a different ballgame altogether. So when a Sri Lankan travels to, like I said, to the UK or to, let's say, a European country, there are very strict guidelines. You cannot ask for an early check-in. You cannot pay and take an early check-in at most of the larger hotels. I actually did this yesterday, trying to check in to a hotel next weekend in London, but they said no, there's no paying extra. You have to pay for the extra night. But over here, we try to be more accommodative, because if there's someone coming from a long-haul flight from UK, for example, they could land at, let's say, 5 a.m. in the morning, and they could have another 3-hour ride down south, and they could be exhausted. But that's just because it's not the check-in time. We have to try and find a way around it to be more accommodative. But this is the challenge when then a Sri Lankan travels abroad. This is so it's more the value proposition and what we have in terms of facilities in Sri Lanka, which is the flexibility which we expect when we travel as well. Okay, that's an easy one, because Sri Lanka has sort of tried to lose its identity while trying to fix its identity over the last few years. And let's say over the last decade as well, from going into conventional traveler to then an experiential traveler. And when I mean experiential traveler, it's also a traveler that is now looking for value for money. which I don't believe is the clientele that we should really focus on. There used to be a common misconception that experiential traveler or a budget traveler will come back with their family with more money after they are much older. But that is, I feel, a long shot. It's not that we shouldn't cater to various segments of clients, but we should segment them and focus on it in a way that it could also benefit the country. So someone who is also more like, let's say if we take in groups which are 200, 300 people coming to Sri Lanka just to do trails or tracks or go to Sea and so on, it's sort of also destroying that destination. I feel that we should preserve the destination more. Like I said so many times, it's a boutique destination. Sri Lanka is perceived as a treasure to most, right? Even though we don't see the importance in some of the areas in Sri Lanka, it's quite a unique entity, Sri Lanka, right? There's a lot of energy, there's a lot of clean air. If you take Alla, it's supposed to have a high oxygen density, which is why a lot of people go and do a lot of Alla stuff there. And now people are investing a lot in Alla and expanding because of the sort of the energy that you get there, right? If you take then the cultures, like we've got Buddhism, Hinduism, there's Catholicism, and Islam and so on. It's a multicultural facet that we have in Sri Lanka that we try to promote. And if you take Buddhism as a whole as well, there's a lot of belief in energy and people's what sort of interest they bring into Sri Lanka. So we want to bring someone who will actually value Sri Lanka. If we bring tourists more, if we focus on tourists just to make money and say, okay, our target is say $50 per head for the next 1 year just to hit our numbers, that is not the place we need to be. We need to be more focused on different segments of tourists, right? Not just hitting numbers, more quality than quantity. So it could be we need to hit 2-3 million tourists by 2027 or 5 million tourists, and keep increasing that target like Thailand does. But we are not looking for that. Even Thailand now is starting to lock down on that. I read an article that they're reducing things like they were very open to a lot of things in Thailand, and they're starting with more restrictions now. Sri Lanka is in a place where they can decide, instead of opening the tap and letting the tourists flow in and then try to control, they're at a position where they can control the quality of what's being let into Sri Lanka, right? But also trying to focus on the value of it. So there has to be value. If we are charging a customer quite a lot of money for a hotel or a villa or even ground transportation, there has to be more understanding and a bit more flexibility from the government entities as well to support what we're trying to give the customer. Because most of the other countries that give this value proposition tend to focus more on the quality of the vehicle, for example, that they're transferred from the airport to the property, right? So the one thing is, like I said, the segmentation of Sri Lanka, right? So the segmentation is, Sri Lanka is still positioned or proposed as one entity, but it needs to be split up into different sectors, different areas in Sri Lanka. The hotels and the offerings need to be split up. So it needs to be the mass market tourism to then the experiential tourism, the luxury segments, and these need to be marketed and positioned separately depending on the market of interest as well. Because luxury market to mass market are two different things. And then where that's advertised and positioned has to be thought of better, I feel. And this is something that I would change going forward if possible. In terms of a proposition for Sri Lanka, because we've always gone on the pretense of just like I said, just a cultural triangle sort of visit, or a beach visit, or just being on the beach for 2 weeks and then coupling that with a quick visit to a temple. This is what needs to change. So the uniqueness of each destination, and also being a year-round destination, and promoting each segments of the country separately as well. So segmentation is the answer.